The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast.
Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike, here with Sam. And Sam, the Suns are on a 3-game win streak. How you doing?
Imagine that. This is, I'm doing well. First of all, thank you. As always, this was easily their best week since they started 8-1, right?
Yeah.
Can you think of a better week for the Phoenix Suns in the past, what was that, 4 months ago? 5 months ago?
Yeah.
It has been an up and down season. You got to take the ups when they come, and there have been no greater ups than what we saw from the Suns this week. Starting with 40-point win over the Raptors, correct? I don't actually have the schedule in front of me. 6-point win over the Bulls. Was a 20-point game for a large stretch of that one, and then, they came back, a little bit of a fake comeback in the fourth quarter, but a 40-point game for Devin Booker in that one. And then the crown jewel of them all, beating the Cleveland Cavaliers, who Kevin Durant called the best team in the NBA.
He did.
I think there's conjecture about that statement. I think it's either them or the Thunder. And I don't know, the Thunder and Cavs fans will have to argue about that, I guess. But they beat one of the two best teams in the NBA in the Cleveland Cavaliers, a 40-point game for Kevin Durant in that one.
Yeah.
They're rolling right now. I mean, it's one thing to beat a couple of bad teams and, just like prove that they could beat anyone, right? But then you beat the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah.
And you have to start asking questions like, oh, did they actually find something here?
Did they find something? And, of course, that's going to be tested because the Cavs actually were struggling going into that. They had lost a few in a row. Now they've lost, I think, 4 in a row. I think they may have won a game since then. But coming up on the Suns' schedule are the Bucks, Celtics, Timberwolves, Rockets, Bucks, Celtics, Knicks, Warriors, Thunder. That's the next set of games for the Suns. It's basically playoff team after playoff team after playoff team, including, I think you could make the case, the best 2 or 3 teams in the NBA based on how they've been playing. With the Celtics twice, of course, and OKC once. OKC once,
One game
and then the Warriors,
OKC,
who have been playing out of their mind lately.
Yeah, the OKC has been, Golden State has been absolutely a top 4, top 5 team in the NBA post Jimmy Butler trade.
Yeah,
it turns out Jimmy Butler's pretty good.
Who knew? Yeah,
we did talk about that a few times pre-deadline.
The Suns trying to trade their worst player for Jimmy Butler would have been a really good trade, it turns out.
Yeah.
That actually may have worked in their favor had they actually pulled that one off. Of course, that completely fell apart, I think, they did their best. That's all I'll say.
So look, silver lining is there are March shenanigans going on right now. There will be April shenanigans in the NBA, and by that I mean that you get to the end of the regular season, and these teams who are at the top of the standings, and many of them, like OKC, has, an 8-game lead in the standings. Boston isn't in any danger of losing the second seed. It's possible that there will be teams who kind of let their guard down. This is the portion of the season where those types of teams actually do let their guard down and they rest various players. And, it's possible that the Suns' schedule becomes a little bit more moderated because of that. But also, you kind of just want to see them have to play and maybe beat tough teams, right? Like, This is what we've been asking for all season long. Before this Cleveland win, I could not name you the last good win that the Suns had this season. They had, don't get me wrong, they had wins against bad teams. Yeah. They had a couple come from behind wins. Maybe that come from behind win against the Clippers.
Yeah.
Maybe,
I think they beat Denver once. That felt pretty good at the time.
They had one steady win against the Lakers, but that was pre-Luka trade, so it was a different Lakers team. My point being, it's been a long season. Like, for you to be at game number 68, game number 69, and be like, yeah, this is the one we've been waiting for. That's kind of a tough look, but at least it's finally happening now, and they will have several chances in this upcoming week to prove that they can maybe do it again.
upcoming few weeks. And I think something that was on my mind when watching this stretch was the final 10 games of the season last season, because it's relevant, I think, in talking about what this team looks like right now. Because the last 10 games of last season was a gauntlet of playoff teams as well. It was 10 playoff teams in a row. And the Suns won 7 of those last 10. And the 3 games they lost by like a combined 100 points, basically, from memory. Like it felt like that. I don't know the exact stats on that. But they did it kind of by doing the same things, just doing it a little crisper, a little better, and with more intent, I think. In that the same guys were playing in those games. Bradley Beal played, I believe, all of those games. It was a combination of the big 3 plus the guys that had played basically all season, with one final healthy stretch towards the end of the year. Then they went to the playoffs and they got their asses kicked 4 games in a row. So to me, part of me is thinking, don't get fooled by this team. March is a weird month in the NBA. Like, lots of weird stuff happens in the NBA in March. There was an Andrew Wiggins 40-point game today, for example. Like, weird stuff tends to happen.
That's a believable thing to happen. Andrew Wiggins is a talented, bucket getter.
Sure. If it does happen, though, it's probably going to happen in March. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to happen other times, I think. But, like, you look at the stats from the last 3 games, and I think what stands out, what's unique about this particular run for the Suns, which is 3 games in a row. I know we're talking about a team with not a ton of wins, so like you have to focus on what's good. Leading scorer of those 3 games, Devin Booker. Second leading scorer, Kevin Durant. Third leading scorer in those 3 games. Do you know who it is?
Oh, wow. Is it Ryan Dunn?
It's Ryan Dunn.
Wow.
It's Ryan Dunn. 28 points for Devin Booker, 27 points for Kevin Durant, 14 points for Ryan Dunn, and then it gets a little jumbled after that. 14 for Nick Richards, 12 for Tyus Jones, Royce O'Neal averaging 10. And then Colin Gillespie, who's doing a great job and only averaging 6 points. And I think possibly I don't even know, maybe the 3rd best player during the stretch, Oso Ighodaro, is only averaging 6 points in those games, just really not scoring much at all. But just when he's on the court, they're absolutely demolishing teams. They're by 17 points a game.
I think it's important when Oso is going up, to try and actually score, whether it be through his floater or through other means, sitting in the dunker spot. Like, I do think, I don't have the numbers in front of me, I do think he's been more efficient as of late, but scoring is not the principal thing that he brings when talking about his impact on the basketball court. It's just not. Actually, I don't remember. Did you get to do your whole Devin Booker Oso spiel on the pod? Okay, you want to do that? Because you were talking about it in playback the other day, just the types of centers that Devin Booker likes playing with, and why he and Oso are such a powerful combo.
So a couple of things, I think, are related to that, because I think for the Suns, in order to find a way to win games, they really had to find the right lineup around Devin Booker when Kevin Durant was off the floor. Because most of the time when the Suns play this season, and I know you looked at these on-off stats actually recently, so you probably have them in your head. If you want to read them out later, you can. But most of the time when Devin Booker and Kevin Durant are on the floor, they're outscoring the other team. Like, they play pretty well.
They're good. They're not contender good, but they are good team good.
They outscore the other team. Like, if you're playing a great team, they're probably going to get beat by a great team even in those minutes. But they're playing the average team to bad teams. Kevin Durant's on the floor. Devin Booker's on the floor. They're on the floor together. They're going to play pretty well. Kevin Durant comes off the floor, and we're talking about games with no Bradley Beal. We'll have a Bradley Beal conversation later, but Kevin Durant comes off the floor. Devin Booker's on the floor by himself. The defense is cratered during those minutes, and the offense is actually a little bit better than when Kevin Durant plays without Devin Booker in those minutes. But most of the time, things just tended to not go well in the minutes with Devin Booker on the floor without other guys. And I think they needed to find the right mix of players to play around Devin Booker, and they needed to play in a style that benefits the way Devin Booker likes to play in order to win those minutes. And I think the mixture of that is a combination of the switch everything thing that they've been doing with Oso Ighodaro on the floor, which causes them to play pretty great defense, actually, surprisingly, and actually get the ball out in transition and play fast and play intentionally fast, which they've done, I think, a great job of in the most recent games, regardless of if Kevin Durant's on the floor or not. But I think with Kevin Durant off the floor, just by my eye test, it's gone even faster because of how good KD is in isolation. They can slow it down a little bit for him. So without him on the floor, they play fast. They play much better defense. But even beyond that, Devin Booker is such a great creator this season, playmaker this season, but still hasn't really been a guy that creates a ton of shots at the rim for players that he plays with.
Just to your point on two things there. As of today, Devin Booker, who's been like whipping it around post All-Star break, he's at a career high 7 assists on the season now. And I think he's been averaging 8 a game since the All-Star break. So he's really taking that facilitating role seriously. But, I mean, just like, listeners, you guys watch the games. Book doesn't really throw lobs. He doesn't.
He also, I believe he is now leading the NBA in 3-point assists.
He's
fantastic. He creates a lot of 3-point shots.
He can get a foot into the paint, and he can find guys at unique angles for 3-point shots all over the place. But even when DeAndre Ayton was there, DeAndre Ayton was a great rim runner. Say what you will about him otherwise, his work ethic and whatever, but he was a great rim runner. And I feel like we constantly question Book's ability to throw him accurate passes. And now there are other guys on the team. Mason Plumlee less so. Like, that was more who Mason Plumlee was 3 or 4 years ago, and he can't really do it anymore. But they bring in Nick Richards. And bottom line is, if Book is the only star on the court, you're talking about the minutes where Book is on, KD is off. And we're not considering Beal. Again, we'll get to that conversation later, but he's not a star anymore regardless, right? Mm-hmm. So if Book's getting trapped...
And if you're talking about him in there, he's sinking those lineups anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. If Book's getting trapped, is it better to pair him with, the guy he can trust, side-to-side movement, the short roll, break you down 2-on-1, 3-on-2 guy, the smarts over athleticism guy, and even then, Oso is pretty athletic, or the guy who's just going to make a straight line drive towards the rim and hope that you can throw a Hail Mary pass above the entire defense and get it to the guy at the rim. And obviously, what we're seeing in the past few weeks is that the answer is Book prefers to play with a guy like Oso, and the offense thrives when he gets to do exactly that.
So, and I think it's really interesting to talk about the specific basketball context that leads to that, because Devin Booker takes a screen at the top of the key, and he is trapped, and he's not just trapped in a way that, like a lot of traps can go. He's trapped really high. Like, they'll trap him near half court if that screen comes near half court. And it's because oftentimes he struggles with traps, and I think the team context has led to him struggling with traps before. And there are times where he just looks for the first wing to pass it to get out of that trap. Now, that could be okay, but oftentimes it's not where the open guy is. The open guy is the center, whose defender is now on Devin Booker, standing probably somewhere just above the free throw line. And if it was Nurkic, last year he occasionally gave it to Nurkic in that scenario. This year, that ended. He stopped looking at Nurkic there. All the way back to DeAndre Ayton. There were times he trusted DeAndre Ayton. That was gone too. Like, by the end of the DeAndre Ayton's career here, he no longer looks at DeAndre Ayton there either.
Because he knew, Booker's a smart player, right? Yeah, he processes the floor well.
For good reason.
With Ayton, and again, we all watched 5 years of DeAndre Ayton, he knew that if he made that pass, that was going to be a 17-foot elbow jumper. And DeAndre Ayton, efficiency-wise, if that's Kevin Durant, fine. That's a 60% shot. When it was DeAndre Ayton, it was a 45% shot. It was bad offense. Devin Booker knew it. Everyone knew it except for a small select fan of group of Ayton defenders, right, who defended him to the death. And as for Nurkic, at a certain point, I think he opened this season wanting to be able to trust Nurk to make that play. But whether it was Nurk kind of, making it a little bit too much about himself and trying to take the mismatch on his own, or just dribbling the ball off his foot, it became clear within probably 10 games this season that he could no longer trust Nurk in that position either. And Oso Ighodaro,
exactly,
he's been flawless.
It's actually kind of remarkable to see, because the extent to which when Devin Booker's trapped that far away from the floor, and if he's not looking at the center, the offense slows down. It becomes a slog. You're playing in mud. But if he does trust that center, the ball moves immediately to the center. And then the center in Oso Ighodaro, because of how good he's been, now there's going to be an occasional turnover, right? And also maybe we're just in this sort of peak of how he's playing. And maybe it'll get worse later. Like, who really knows? But in the last 3 games in particular, really 5 games. Like, if we're looking at a stretch of 5 games, I think that's fair to look at. If you look at those 5 games, Oso Ighodaro has been moving the ball so quickly when he catches it from there that the defense is scrambling. Now, it might be one pass from Oso and a Caleb Martin dunk in the example that I posted. I'm sorry, Caleb Martin. You know what I'm talking about. A dunk in the example that I posted online. Or it could be a 3-point shot after 3 passes after that. You know, like the ball swing, and then there's an open 3-point shot. There are opportunities to be had if the ball moves quickly when you're playing 4-on-3, which is what the Suns are doing in that scenario. And they've struggled to do that basically the entirety of Devin Booker's career. And right now, Oso Ighodaro is doing a great job helping them create open shots for that. While doing that. And I will say, too, this is a recent development. Like, I'm not going to say that Oso was good at this all year. We've seen flashes of him potentially being good at this. But to get to the point where Devin Booker swings it to him immediately when he has the opportunity to, that's a high level of trust that rookies often don't have. And I think it shows good, obviously, development in Oso Ighodaro, good leadership in Devin Booker in giving it to him in that scenario. And also, it's just something that can be developed on year over year. Like Oso Ighodaro is under contract. If he's here next year, they can keep doing this and they can get better and better and better in that scenario. And I think it's important because, I think it's important because we're talking about the most likely scenario. Now, of course, as we're looking at this good stretch of Suns basketball, I think every Suns fan, rightfully so in some ways, should say, what if Durant just stays? But the most likely scenario, based on all the reporting, is that the Suns are looking to build around Devin Booker next year without Kevin Durant because of how poorly this season has gone on the whole. So if we're looking at that, then we have to talk about the best players to best highlight what Devin Booker is good at. And you can't just put Nick Richards in that starting lineup or even like a better version of Nick Richards. You have to find players that work well with him, and that means the big that plays with Devin Booker, if you want to maximize Devin Booker, has to be one that can catch it in the middle of the floor and make plays. Now, that could be anything. Like, it could be a jump shot in some scenarios. It could be a drive to the rim, but they have to be able to pass, and I think that's like the main thing in order for Devin Booker to trust that player over and over and over again. So contextually, like, we can talk about who those players can be later, but I think overall, as a fan base, if you try to think about this through that lens, it helps you to understand, I think, honestly, a lot of the moves James Jones has made in the past. You know, putting Dario Saric on the team when he did. Frank Kaminsky, even, if you want to talk about Frank Kaminsky. Or in the past, there was a rumor that DeAndre Ayton would have been traded for Sabonis. And like, if you think about that now, you're like, okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. Like,
this is bringing us to another, I think, deeper conversation that I probably don't want to have today about, like, is James Jones going to be scapegoated and to what extent will he kind of have to fall on the sword for other errors made by this front office? But I think you could certainly argue that James has made some mistakes in his tenure about kind of overemphasizing skill and IQ at the expense of some athleticism, that they could have had additional athleticism on this team over the years, and that's true. He's also all along understood, though, the reason he's always brought in those high IQ bigs, guys who move the ball quickly, move the ball with pace, is because he's always understood he's building around stars, whether it be Devin Booker 5 years ago or now, or Chris Paul, or DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, Kevin Durant, honestly, all of them. They have never gotten easy paint touches and paint points, right? This team has never been centered around a Giannis. They don't have a run and dunk man who can just, or Jokic, like just a towering player who's just so physically imposing over all the others. Even Shea, someone who can get into the paint at will. That has never been. It is a privilege to be able to build around a superstar like that. The Suns have never had that privilege throughout the Devin Booker era. And I think James Jones has understood that, and he's tried his best to augment the roster, give it some flourishes that they could do their best to kind of build around. That kind of weakness, right? But of course, it also has its downfalls. For Oso, to bring us back to the present day, what I've been encouraged by, in addition to obviously the short roll stuff that I know he's pretty good at, he needs to be good at the big man stuff too, right? Like, he only gets to stay on the floor. I mean, just the fact that he played 44 minutes against the Cleveland Cavaliers, that's massive. That's incredible. Did he ever play 44? I mean, they wouldn't even play 44 minutes in college. I was about to say, did he even play 44 minutes at Marquette?
No, I mean,
not unless they went to overtime.
And he played every minute, yeah.
So for him to be in this, the other thing I want to know, I know I'm bouncing around with different ideas here, but it is exciting to talk about a team performing well for once. Like, the trust that Book has in Oso, and Ryan Dunn for that matter, and the trust that KD has in them too, you just wonder what they've been thinking behind the scenes for the past 2 or 3 months while those guys weren't playing, right? Again, you go back to that game, I forget who it was against, but KD yelling at Bud, you need someone who can guard out here. And, I mean, have they just been diplomatic about it the entire time and they kind of, they understood? Because now those guys re-enter the lineup and it looks like they have way more chemistry than you would expect for guys who have not played as much as we've wanted at this point in the season. And just the last thing I'll say about Oso with regards to the big man stuff, rebounding. He's done a really good job rebounding the ball this week. 11 offensive rebounds in these 3 games, these 3 wins. That's the stuff that's going to keep him on the floor. That's the stuff that's going to give you the confidence that he actually can be a long-term center in the NBA, not just, we were maybe talking about him as kind of a hybrid 4-5 who could fit in next to a stretch 5. Maybe that's still the case. Maybe there will be a future roster where Oso gets to play a little bit more at power forward because he gets to play next to a guy like that. But for now, with this roster, he needs to play at center to succeed. And he's rebounding the ball well. He's playing good defense. So all of that is great to see.
And by the way, shout out to the rest of the team, I think, who has done a much better job of boxing out lately as well. And I think you can look at like Royce O'Neal in the last 3 games is averaging 8.3 rebounds. I think that when the entire team is sort of locked in on the little things like that, that's how you get big wins in the way that they have. There obviously is the obvious question is why weren't they just boxing out before? And I actually understand that and I agree with that to some extent, but also I do kind of think there has to be some level of belief out there for them to feel like they need to do those little things constantly, right? Because you can just kind of get beat down mentally and emotionally over the course of a game if you're doing some of the little things and then you're not getting the rebound anyway. You know what I mean? And I think the opposite can be the case if you're playing with guys where you feel like you could really win the game. Oso Ighodaro, Ryan Dunn can have that effect on guys too. Or I don't know, maybe that's not necessarily the case, but either way, they've locked in on boxing out. Devin Booker, most of the season, did a really bad job of boxing out. And the last 5 or 6 games, he's actually been more intent on boxing out, and that makes a difference if him and other guys can do it. But also if they just put more scrappy guys out there to play like they have been lately. Cody Martin, for example, who maybe isn't getting a ton of rebounds, but is getting 1 offensive rebound a game, which is helpful. Ryan Dunn has upped his at least his intention to grab rebounds. I mean, he's averaging 7, basically 6.7 in the last 3 games in their win streak as well. So obviously there's more intent to grab those rebounds, but it helps if everyone's kind of involved in the rebounding when Oso Ighodaro's on the floor because, he's just not huge. He's not Nurkic.
Cody Martin, of course, he's played 67 minutes in 4 games, right? But he's averaging 10.2 rebounds per 36. So he's rebounding well as a Sun. Mm-hmm. He's just only playing 15, 20 minutes a game. But he's getting in there. He's hustling after it. He's getting a crazy amount of deflections, steals, blocks. We're seeing the full court press, a little bit from him, a little bit from Colin Gillespie. I mean, it just feels like, you're an opposing offense and you're going to enter the court and you see Colin Gillespie, Cody Martin, and Ryan Dunn all on the court at the same time, which has happened a couple of times. And now you're thinking, I actually have to work for it. Which never felt like something that you would say about the Suns up to this point in the season, right? Actually, as we're sitting here, I've been checking the past few games to see if their defensive rating would start to go up a little bit in the standings. Unfortunately, they're still 27th on the season. I'm just not sure they're going to be able to finish, even if they build some momentum here, any higher than 24th, 25th at best. But we are starting to see flashes of positive defense for the first time, literally the first time all year. And it comes from the effort.
Let's talk about the $50 million elephant in the room in this scenario. The Suns are now 12-3. Now I didn't verify this; I just saw it on Twitter. But 12-3 in games where Bradley Beal does not play, and Devin Booker and Kevin Durant do. They do play. And part of the reason there are minutes to go around for players like Cody Martin, Ryan Dunn, for example, is because he's not playing. Even Colin Gillespie, right, is playing because Bradley Beal's not playing. And like this stretch of basketball, would they have won these games with Bradley Beal? I personally think probably not. Maybe one of them, maybe two of them, but definitely not all
Raptors
three.
game. I mean, they won that game by 40.
Yeah, maybe that one. The Raptors are tanking too. Like, let's be honest, the Raptors are trying to lose at this point. But like, what's going to happen when he comes back, or what are the options for the Suns? Now we touched on. I don't remember if it was last week or if it was on our Patreon pod, but we touched on the idea of he should just not play the rest of the season. He hasn't been healthy anyway. If you could find ways to get him healthy, fine, do that. This is not a good fit for him basketball wise. They're at their worst when he plays by net rating throughout this entire season, and that's just where we're at with him at this point. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that when you see that 12-3 record?
Yeah, I think there's some desire probably on the part of the Suns to see if they can. So first of all, you still have to see if he's worth something, and if you bench the guy entirely, then that's tough. And maybe see if you can salvage any sort of relationship with Bradley Beal. Now, it is a fact that they are at their worst when he plays. And you're right, I did post those stats. And they are a minus 15 when Brad plays with Book and without KD. And they're a minus 16 when Brad plays with KD and there's no Book. And the numbers just are not good. And I think it comes, not that Brad is not still a capable NBA player, but it all just comes from this general lack of intention about the way he carries himself, the way he plays. I understand he makes $50 million, so he probably feels like, you know, he's proven something in this league. He's had multiple seasons averaging 30 points per game. But, like, here we are, and we're not paying you for who you were 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. We need you to play defense right now and take these possessions seriously right now. And if you're not going to do it, and Colin Gillespie is, and Cody Martin is, then guess what? Those are the guys who should play. So, I don't know. In terms of, can you salvage the Beal relationship at this point? I think it's tricky. I think if there's anyone you could identify right now in the rotation where, okay, it's fine, Beal can have that guy's minutes, you would bench Tyus Jones and say, okay, Brad, we're going to continue to play Colin. We're going to continue to play Cody Martin. These guys have really brought a lot of energy for us. You're going to slot into the 20 minutes that Tyus Jones is currently playing, mostly as a second side catch and shoot threat. But even that's a little tough because Tyus Jones has been good lately.
Now I think every three, yeah.
I think Brad can do just as well in that role.
Before Brad was injured, his shooting was not the problem.
He can shoot.
Everything else, yeah.
It's the pace. It's the general, lethargic energy that he brings with him to the floor, and he's just not a good fit here.
Yeah.
We brought up some trades last week. I think it's difficult to find a place where he is a good fit because teams have to fundamentally believe. It's so hard with shooting guards and guys who are a little undersized, guys who are not primary initiators, not primary point guards, but are still 6'3", 6'4", not really players who you trust to have that two-way impact. Brad needs to prove that he can have that two-way impact in some sort of lesser role in his 30s. Otherwise, I don't know how much longer he's going to stick around in the NBA. Not to be too dramatic, I don't think he's going to go to Europe on his next contract or anything, but like
the next contract will be fascinating though.
But the next contract is not going to be anywhere near $50 million. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. And I think that's, I've had a couple people ask us about this. John Voida, editor for Bright Side of the Sun, wrote an article on the concept of waiving and stretching Bradley Beal. Because the issue with Bradley Beal, I think, at this point, is not that there's not probably a basketball fit for him. I think he's still really talented, and there probably is a basketball fit for him. But we're talking about this current Suns team. The best role for him is a Tyus Jones off-the-bench 20-minute-a-game role. You don't really find a team that wants to pay someone $110 million over the next 2 years for 20 minutes off the bench. And there's probably teams where he can play a bigger role and they can still be pretty good. This is not one of them. So finding a trade for Bradley Beal, regardless of the ones we talked about last week, it requires a complicated scenario. A team has to be willing to take him. He has to be willing to go there. They have to be willing to have a player with a no-trade clause, and they have to be willing to pay him $110 million over the 25-26 and 26-27 season. So the question is, what if the Suns can't find someone, a team that's willing to do that? Do they just play him? Do they just bench him without playing him? Just eat the $110 million that comes with his contract? And then there's this option that John wrote about on Bright Side of the Sun, which is $53.7 million. 25-26 is what he makes. 26-27, you ready for this number? $57.1 million is what Bradley Beal's contract is in 26-27. Those are the final 2 years of his deal. If you're talking about waiving and stretching him, if you're taking this idea seriously, that's $110 million. Say he gets all of that money, right? Say the Suns work out some sort of waive scenario, not a buyout, just a waive and stretch, $110.8 million. If you spread that out over 5 seasons, that's an annual cap hit, according to John, of $22.1 million, which would be on the Suns cap sheet from 25-26 to 29-30.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the waive and stretch provision recently, by the way, just from memory. I think it's like a number of remaining years, for those who don't know, times 2 plus 1 or something. So if a guy has 1 year left, exactly, you're paying him for 3 years. If a guy has 2 years left, you're paying him for 5 years. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1.
The cap hit would be 5 years, right? Yeah.
The cap hit, yeah,
you can
exactly.
pay him however you want. Yeah, probably.
Right. So it's not like you don't have the choice. Just in case anyone was sitting at home asking themselves, well, could you pay Brad $5 million for the next 20 years? You can't do that. That would be really funny if you could.
Yeah, right.
Or the cap hit.
When you win the lottery, yeah.
He gets the money regardless, but we're talking about the cap hit. So the cap hit would be $22 million of dead cap on the Suns sheet until 2030. 5 years. 5 years from now is 2030. I just think that's untenable, is my opinion.
I think it's...
What do you think?
I agree. I almost think it would be better just to let him expire or just keep him for this season and see if there's any way to get off of him for that final year. Like maybe there's a world where he's traded in that final year and he negotiates a scenario where he like changes his contract to sign an extension or something.
Bad contracts also always become a little bit more movable. Even a contract as bad as that, I think, in the final year of their deal.
The final year of the deal, and the cap will probably rise over the next 2 years, so the overall cap hit will be not as bad to a team.
Yeah. It's just, you can't, $22 million, and I understand it works in both ways, right? Like, because the cap is going up for the next 5 years, but $22 million even 5 years from now will be a lot of money. If you're trying to construct a playoff team in 2029 around Ryan Dunn, who has become Kawhi Leonard, and you have to kick yourself because you can't afford the final piece who would make $20 million because shit, that $20 million is going to Bradley Beal. You're not gonna want that. You're not gonna want that. You need to sit with the bad decision that you made right now, and I understand it sucks.
But it's 2 years, yeah.
But it's 2 years. And I think maximum 1 more year of this guy, they're going to really try to get off him. But I think maximum 1 more year, and then maybe we can reevaluate and they can get something done in the final year of his deal. You don't want to be thinking about this for 5 more years. You just don't.
I mean, truthfully, you're going to attach a pick to him or something, like maybe even 2. I'd rather do that and just get off of him now. Like, we're talking about a scenario where the Suns are most likely going to be attempting to build around Devin Booker next year and then potentially for the next few years if it goes well next year. And there's just no scenario to me where that works and that makes sense if you're also paying someone who's not on the team $22 million a year and it goes towards your cap and it just eliminates your ability to use that over the next 5 years. So, like, if you're trading Book, then yeah, who cares? At that point, you're probably going to suck. Maybe you get your picks back from Houston or whatever in this case, and then do whatever you want with Brad. Keep him in that case. Like, you might as well do whatever. Keep him for 2 years or make him find a team that's willing to take him in order to trade him. Because at that point, nothing really matters as far as what you're putting out onto the court. But if you're still trying to be good and you have Devin Booker, I don't know. It just doesn't work for me. I don't think there's any scenario. Like, I actually, part of me does think, do whatever it takes to make me not have to watch this guy in the Suns, right? Like, I understand that feeling. I understand why people think that that's a good idea. But the cap, the way that it works is the not fun part about rooting for a basketball team is that the reality of winning a championship is the math that goes into the cap. Like, you find the best team you could put together based on the salary rules. And if you can do a really good job within those rules based on the math that's placed in front of you, then you can win a championship. And if you start changing that equation to make it more complicated for you, you're, I don't know, cutting off your nose to spite your face or whatever that phrase is.
Yeah. You're making me curious a little bit. I feel like we're getting a look at your psyche. You're admitting, do whatever so that I don't have to watch this guy. In Suns history, have you thought about like a player who gets paid a substantive salary, not like, not a bench player? Who's your least favorite high salary player in Suns history?
I've definitely thought about this.
To watch.
Yes, it's
to watch, not as a person. We're not assassinating his character. Just I don't enjoy watching this guy play basketball.
Okay, so I've been a fan since 2005. So
have I.
It's probably Bradley Beal at this point. Yeah,
I think there's a few contenders. I felt I never liked the Shaq fit. I was young.
Shaq is there
at the time.
I think DeAndre Ayton in certain games and certain days is absolutely on that list for me, but at times could be better. I think he even more so than Bradley Beal. In that he didn't sink the team as much.
I would absolutely put Brandon Knight on this list. That was an abject failure of a trade. And by like the third year, I think we had Brandon Knight for 3 years. By the third year, he was literally doing what we're debating doing with Brad here, which is just play off the bench. We'll give you 20 minutes a game. Try not to fuck up.
Yeah.
Like that's how much.
And then you'll be out of the NBA.
They lost. And then he bounced around for a couple more seasons as like a third stringer. And he was basically out of the NBA. So I think honestly for me, it's kind of,
man, Ryan McDonough was bad.
It's scary to me the way I've always wanted to say that Brad is more talented than Brandon Knight, but it's scary to me the way that I see some parallels in their careers. And if you had to ask me which guy I enjoy watching least on the court, I think it's probably one of those two.
Well, I think Brandon Knight was on the team like in sort of an inconsequential era of Suns basketball.
But he was in hindsight, but they were trying to compete, right? They acquired Brandon Knight after the Dragic 48-win season, and obviously they had to trade Dragic because they alienated him, whatever. But they were still telling themselves that this is a playoff team.
But it's different than trading absolutely everything that the Suns could possibly trade.
Oh, the expectations are different.
Right?
No,
and then also now leading to because of how bad of a move that was, I think the Bradley Beal move is the main thing that sunk this era of Suns basketball, in my opinion. Because any other player without a no-trade clause that's valuable on the trade market could have changed the trajectory of this team, or just valuable on the court could have changed the entire trajectory of this team. So leading the KD trade that when he came to the Phoenix Suns, you and I celebrated on this podcast. And also, they were good. The rest of that season, they didn't lose a single game in the regular season. They won a playoff series in the playoffs, and then they lost to the eventual champions in those playoffs. And then, what we're looking at
and then
now,
Josh Bartelstein happened.
Yeah, what we're looking at now is what we're looking at now, right? Like, it's just the scenario that we're in, and that is now going to lead to the Suns being forced, essentially, to trade Kevin Durant because they really don't have any other option. Like, that's just their only option to salvage this. And I think the main reason for that is that Bradley Beal is not effective while on the court, even if he was missing all this time, which I think people still have a problem with. And like, I don't know, like if you're injured, you're injured. Like, it's hard for me to get too mad about that, but I understand why people feel the way they feel about it. But if he was missing all that time, but when he played, they were great, then fine. Like, then we can just hope they're healthy in the playoffs.
This is not a Brooklyn, Kyrie, Harden, KD situation where they never played, but when they did all play, they were like 18-2 or whatever it was, right? It's not that, and it never has been that, and it never will be that. But you're bringing up a next great existential question, which is what we have to have, again, about KD, to trade or not to trade.
Yes.
Because there are people, do you want to Are we coming out of break here? Are we going into break?
Let's just quickly just talk about the concept of not trading him real quick, and then we'll talk about a trade that I put together, or a trade partner that I put together.
I think this is important, if I can just say, because I know there are people, I know for a fact because they're in our Twitter replies, that there are people who are already tired of us talking about a trade every week. I would say to those people, you can skip the 20-minute segment of the podcast every week that is devoted to trades.
And it's always at the end of the podcast, too. So
it's at the end of the podcast. You have to consider a few things. First of all, where we were mentally a few weeks ago, the season was over. It was dead. There was no life in the fan base. No one was excited to watch Suns games. It's great that they've recaptured some of that, but don't let that fool you. We are still the 10th seed in the Western Conference and under 500.
And we're honestly begging for the 10th seed. I can't even imagine telling myself that at the beginning of the season.
So some people are going to ask themselves, why don't they just keep Kevin Durant? And I think that's a very valid question to ask. And it's very valid to feel that way, if you do feel that way. For me, it comes down to, this is just my own personal calculus, and then I'll ask you what your personal calculus is. Are you, if you keep Kevin Durant, because his championship window is, first of all, I think Kevin Durant, I guess, likes Phoenix. He really seems to like Phoenix. He really seems to like Book.
Still an effective basketball player.
Still an effective basketball player at age 36.
One of the most efficient scorers in the NBA.
We're going to say he'll still be an effective basketball player next year, but after next year, who knows? His championship window is right now.
It's also the only year he signed for. He's only signed for next year.
The argument to keep Kevin Durant is if you can convince yourself of the following. We are one Bradley Beal trade and maybe a few more veteran minimum signings, replace the veteran minimum guys we got last year, Tyus Mason, with new veteran minimum guys, because they'll still be an apron team, unless they get magically lucky with a Brad trade, which I just don't think is going to happen. Are you a Brad trade and minimum signings away from this team being a contender? Now, it's great that they've recaptured some of the momentum. It's great that Oso and Ryan have come further along than we expected from them. It's great that maybe they found something in Colin Gillespie. We want them to sign him to a long-term deal. All that is great.
Waive Micic, by the way.
Waive Micic and sign him to a deal already. Yeah. Personally, I think, I love the Suns. I'm rooting for them. I would love for it to be a great Cinderella story. I think it's more likely that, if they're a Beal trade and some other stuff away, and then they build around Book and KD next year, that's still a first round, at best a second round exit. To me, there's just no version of it where you make it a true contender. And if you can't make them a true contender, but you have to settle for them being a pretender because that's how far they've fallen this season, you just got to give up the ghost and let the guy go. It's better for both parties, honestly.
There's no scenario where Kevin Durant will be like, yeah, let me stay here on this 10th or 11th seed if you just trade Bradley Beal for really bad players on bad contracts. Why would he want to be here for that? Honestly, the reason it's really difficult to have that conversation is because Bradley Beal has no trade value. That's it. He has no trade value. If your solution to this team is just trade Bradley Beal for a couple of great players, then yeah, you're right. That would be awesome. It's just impossible. That's like trying to turn $1 into $100 at this point. It's like the guy who traded a paperclip for a house or whatever. We're not going to trade this paperclip for a house.
Crypto gambling is right up your alley. Bradley Beal was a pump and dump. He was a rug pull. The Phoenix Suns got rug pulled when they traded for Bradley Beal. That's what happened.
Speaking of trade, we got to talk about it. And we're going to have a trade section on the podcast every week, and you can listen to it or you cannot. And I think most people love it, for the record, Sam. I know we had a couple people complaining about it, but honestly, those people I've been complaining about a lot lately, so it is what it is. Frustrating time to be a Suns fan for a lot of people, even though they've had fun in the last 3 games. In this case, and this is the reason I waited to do this team, because I thought there would be a chance that there would be some scuttlebutt at some point where we had the opportunity to talk about the Houston Rockets. And in this case, there was actual reporting, if you want to call it that Houston and KD, that could be a partner that comes to fruition this summer. And the way that this went down was Chris Mannix, who writes for Sports Illustrated, said that KD might end up in Houston. Now, he said that it's his opinion that KD might end up in Houston, but it's something to watch in the offseason. Very reporter speak type of thing where you take no responsibility for making a report. But on top of that, Gambo retweeted that and said, this is the same as what we've been saying, essentially, that KD could end up in Houston during the offseason. Houston is in a particularly interesting place because, as we know, the Houston Rockets traded the Brooklyn Nets their picks back in order to get the Suns picks. And then when that happened, Woj, in his last offseason, said that they were interested in Kevin Durant and also that they could be interested in Devin Booker if he shakes free in the future. So they own the Phoenix Suns 2025 pick, 2027 pick, and 2029 pick. So they have 3 Suns picks. They also own their own picks, basically all of them in future years from what I saw. And they have some swaps with Brooklyn that they still kept, which could be kind of interesting in their case because they only traded the picks that they owned outright back to the Brooklyn Nets, kept all of those swaps in the off years, which is what went down in the James Harden trade originally. There's just been noise about the Houston Rockets and Kevin Durant for a while. Now, I want to cover a couple of trades because I didn't think there was any way to do this without more than one trade because they just have a lot of guys that are on sort of middle to large salaries and a lot of players probably that are going to end up needing to be paid by the Houston Rockets, which I don't think they're really going to have the ability to do. The first trade I want to cover is one that Gambo said on Twitter. So he replied to someone saying what trade makes sense to him. And his trade was Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, and Jalen Green plus picks for Kevin Durant. Now, he didn't say what picks, but we know the picks that they own right now. Let's just say 27 and 29 picks, and they keep the 2025 one. 2 picks that could end up being pretty valuable, especially if Devin Booker ends up being gone for any reason, for the Phoenix Suns. So Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, Jalen Green plus picks. What's your first reaction to that one?
He didn't specify the picks. That's what you just said.
Let's say 27 and 29. Or let's just say 27. Because I don't really think they're likely going to put multiple picks for the Suns back in it because I think they're going to want to wait to see if Devin Booker gets traded. Honestly, I think that's something that they're going to want to do.
My first thought is I think there's a version of this package that works for me if you can convince another team of, do you have a 3-team trade in here somewhere?
I do. Yeah.
So Jalen Green is the sticking point for me.
Exactly.
There's a couple sticking points. I really like Tari Eason. He'd be awesome. He would make us a good defense. Go from being a terrible defense to a good defense, quite possibly just in one role player. If anyone could do it, Tari Eason could do it.
He's like Cody Martin if Cody Martin was like young and twice as athletic. Like he kind of is the same and bigger, honestly.
Jabari Smith is, I think you just have to be comfortable with the notion that maybe he's just not going to be that great, but he's going to have a 12 to 15 year career as capable.
I think there's a
Jabari
chance
Smith,
that he's destined to be overpaid. I think there's a chance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly. And so next year is his 4th season. If you're going to acquire a guy like Jabari Smith, you have to be comfortable with the idea that you're going to be giving him that extension. And I don't want to pay Jabari Smith based on what he's done in the NBA so far, $30+ million.
Pretty good defender though, as well.
He's a pretty good defender. He can shoot threes, and he can play both the 4 and the 5 a little bit. He will have a career in the NBA. I just don't want to pay. I just don't want to pay him $30 million. That's really all it is. So yeah, that would be something you have to think about. Jalen Green is tough because on the one hand, he's still pretty young. It's only his 4th season.
Yeah,
he's very talented. He chucks all shots, but he really chucks threes. He would do a lot for your 3-point shooting volume. He's a pretty good shooter. The Rockets are 8 points worse with Jalen Green on the floor this season. Their defense is 7 points worse. Their defense overall is 3rd, or maybe it's not 3rd. Maybe it's like 4th or 5th. But they have a good defensive rating. The Rockets are a good defensive team. It is not because of Jalen Green. Their defense is much worse with him on the floor. His offense is good. I think he makes better decisions than he did a couple years ago with the ball in his hands. He takes a lot of threes. There could be a really good basketball player in there. I'm just not sure about the fit of him next to Devin Booker.
It doesn't work. Yes.
And I
it's
think
just another Bradley Beal type fit to me. Yeah.
If you could find a third team that says, hey, we'll take Jalen Green, and here are a couple of players that make up to Jalen Green. How much does he make? 30? 25?
Yeah, like $33 million, and I think something like $36.5 million over the next 2 years.
That could be
2
perfect.
years after next year.
That could be perfect to acquire a young player and a role player, or two more role players who make $15 million and are both pretty good. You know, like I think once you start turning it into a 3-team package, it makes more sense for the Suns.
I think there's a chance that Jalen Green could be good eventually. I don't think that that's going to happen on the Suns with Devin Booker. If you want to carve out a role for Jalen Green with Devin Booker, he could be the exact same offensive player, which to me is mediocre. Just, athletic, but not like a guy who's going to absolutely give you a lot on the offensive end and make your offense much better on a regular basis. He can be that player. He's got to be a scrappy defender who tries really hard on that end in order to have a role next to Devin Booker. Because if he's also a mediocre defender and a mediocre offensive player, maybe there's more juice in that offense. But I'm not sure that playing with Devin Booker is the right path to get him to actually being the guy who has more juice on the offensive end when it comes to that. So, yeah, he doesn't make sense to me. And, yes, I knew that was going to be your thought process. And, of course, that was my thought process as well. So what do you do in that place? In that case, I should say, you try to find a third team for him, for Jalen Green. So the first team that I thought of for Jalen Green, do you want to try to guess? Do you have a guess who I thought of?
Is it our trusty friend, the Orlando Magic, who always need offense?
It's a good question, and yes, I thought of them. But the first team I thought of was the Atlanta Hawks.
Okay.
Because I think there's a chance that the Atlanta Hawks could be a better situation for him. They have some players that are relatively good. First of all, they have an offensive engine in Trae Young that is one of the best assist guys in the NBA. He could play off the ball, and Trae Young can find ways to get him easy buckets over and over and over again. And yes, Trae is pretty ball dominant, but in the minutes Trae's not on the floor, he could play some sort of two-man role with Jalen Johnson and find something that works on that end. And I think they have the opportunity to try to be good because they don't have a lot of their own picks, and eventually they're going to catch up to having their own picks again, but they need to try to be good over the next few years. Taking a gamble on somebody with Jalen Green's offensive upside for the Atlanta Hawks at least made sense to me. And if there's Atlanta Hawks fans listening, I know you hate this trade, right? Everyone hates every trade in the middle of the season. Wait till the offseason
until it happens.
Yeah.
I mean, this would be Atlanta just completely abandoning the notion of we want to play defense. But okay.
Not
cool
necessarily. I think there's a world where
who are they sending to us?
Okay, so that's what I want to talk about. So say Houston gets KD, Jalen Green goes to Atlanta. The two, and really three, but potentially two guys that I had here was Okongwu and Niang, basically, who's not a great player, but shoots a ton of threes and is a little feisty. And in order to make it work on the trade machine, it made me include Kobe Buffkin, who's their 15th pick, who just had shoulder surgery. I think is out for the rest of the season. But I think you could do it without Buffkin in the offseason when everything sort of resets and they can create a little bit of cap space to eat the rest of Jalen Green's contract. And this trade would essentially be Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, Onyeka Okongwu, and George Niang back to the Suns for Jalen Green, of course, and Kevin Durant goes to Houston. First draft of a trade here. And the reason I think the Atlanta Hawks might be willing to do this is I'm not sure what they think of Okongwu. It's been a weird time for him there. They gave him a contract extension. He makes like $15 to $20 million over the next few years. He plays, but they kept him off the bench like the majority of his career, even though it was something that they said that they considered their future. Just not really has worked with him and Trae Young as far as what you kind of want out of that. And, Jalen Green has a really high offensive upside that can pair him with Jalen Johnson, who kind of plays he's like the same size as Okongwu because that's how big Okongwu is. Not a huge center. But what do you think? What do you think of this one?
Yeah, they're finally letting him start post All-Star break, and he has some really interesting numbers, including some really good three-point shooting, Okongwu. I think he's averaging 15 and 10 as a starter. I love Onyeka Okongwu. I think the only thing about the Suns from a team building perspective there is you're locking yourself into assuming Oso is your backup or something going into next year.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
You have two really consistent guys who play the same way. You also have two guys who are quite small for their position. And so like you need a 7-footer, I think, on the roster somewhere because Okongwu is not and Oso is not. But outside of that, I think he could work really well with Devin Booker. And so now the package becomes Okongwu, Jabari Smith, Tari Eason, and picks, correct? Oh, and
Niang.
George Niang.
Which you could keep or not. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
mean,
you could flip into another team, but I think he's actually a perfectly fine backup wing.
I think that's
Suns.
four. I think that's four guys who can slot into your rotation next year, and you got some picks. That's
maybe
good
a
trade.
pick probably is my guess.
Okay, I think
Yeah,
it's good.
It's
Yeah,
good.
I like it.
Realistic, I don't know. We'll see how many angry Hawks fans we have in our replies after this episode posts. It's not the only option for Houston, and I think this is why Houston becomes an interesting team to talk about because they have a couple of other big salaries that I think they would prefer to probably move in a trade, and one of them is Dillon Brooks. Like I think if you're the Houston Rockets, here's what your offer would be to start: Dillon Brooks, Jabari Smith, Jock Landale.
Okay, fuck off.
So my question to that is, how many Suns picks would you want in order to take that? Would you do
All
it if
three.
you got all three?
Yeah. Well, let me look at Brooks's contract real quick. Is he expiring?
It's a lot. No, I don't think it is expiring.
No, he's got 2 more years. He's got 2 more years on his deal. Jock Landale's fine.
$8 million next year only.
$8 million. So I have to take Jock. Can we replace Jock Landale with? I need to pull up their.
You mean like
roster sheet.
You mean Tari Eason, basically?
Give me Tari Eason and Cam Whitmore. Can we do that?
That's about what Jock Landale makes. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm saying.
You're
if
saying they wouldn't do that.
Like what I'm saying is they're trying to build the best team next year to potentially win a championship. And if they're saying
I know they are.
Instead of giving you the players, we'll give you the picks and you get these players, would you do that? Is basically what I'm saying. If you get all 3 Suns picks and you get Dillon Brooks, Jabari Smith, Jock Landale, would you do it? Just start there. All 3 picks. We're talking 1 year of Kevin Durant.
Yeah, but I really don't like Dillon Brooks that much.
Nobody's going to like this
or
trade.
Jabari Smith.
Nobody's going to like this trade. All 3 of these guys would play on the Suns. Jock Landale would start on the Suns right now. You know what I mean?
I guess I'd do it. Yeah, okay, fine. I guess I'd do it.
I understand. It's not good. It's not good.
It's just not a fun trade, but fine. I guess I would do it.
But they end up keeping... I think they want to probably get rid of Jalen Green, but like I'm just trying to figure out a version of this where they keep a team that could win the championship next year with what they have, and this is the version that I came up with. Now, another salary. Fred VanVleet makes $44 million. Kevin Durant makes $54 million next year. So if you start with Fred VanVleet coming back to the Suns, in order for the Suns to get under the second apron, they essentially have to shed $10 million of salary. So say the Houston Rockets can take that extra $10 million of salary and the Suns get back a player in order to do that. If you're including Fred VanVleet in that trade, that's the only player you can take back in order to shed $10 million of salary. So I really struggle trying to think of any version of a trade where the Suns included Fred VanVleet in that trade.
I would consider doing VanVleet plus one of Eason or Whitmore, which is you're not shedding $10 million, then you're shedding $7 million.
It's got to be, to me, it's got to be Eason in that case. And
Whitmore Whitmore barely plays and still has star potential, but I feel you. Eason
will be good next year
right now.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like he'll be good
Yeah.
next year. So it's tough for me.
VanVleet, Eason, and 3 picks would move me.
Yeah, and then you have to find other ways to get under the second apron. You pray to God it's a trade with Bradley Beal. So those are the options that I came up with. Now I want to throw a couple of other things out there, just to see how you feel about it. Other potential Jalen Green teams that could be trades that could work. Orlando, you mentioned them. Tough to find like what it would be for them. And by the way, I'm not sure that they would want him. It adds a guy who has like star potential as a guard, which is kind of what they need more than anything. So there is a world where it works out really well for them. But
I
he
don't know
has
that
to
they
become
wanna-
a really efficient shooter in order for that to work to me.
The tough thing about Orlando is like everyone knows they need offense, but at the same time, I'm not sure how much they want it to. If they're committing to Franz and Paolo as their duo, and maybe they won't, but if they are, they want the ball in the hands of those guys. They don't just want to turn it over to Jalen Green and say, okay, it's your team now, which is why like
but they
some
need
of the players,
a guard,
they do need a guard.
So it's tough.
But it's why some of the guys I've been trying to trade to them in our recent episodes have been like guys who I think can aid their offense in an off-ball sense, like Clay being a great shooter, Vucevic being like, a spacer at the 5.
I know what you mean, but I think they need a creator. I really think they need another creator.
They might. Paolo's not a good creator.
You can't be a good team in the NBA and not have a guard that's a great creator. Like, it's just really, really difficult. So for them,
they need Tyus Jones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they can get him next year. He'll be available. The guys that I had is you. Let's say you start with Jonathan Isaac, which I think you do, like because it's Jalen Green. Like he doesn't.
Can I not?
You kind of have to. I know, but you start with Jonathan Isaac, and then you have other guys that you could put in there. You could put Goga in there, and you just get Goga. I mean, obviously, I would want Suggs, but you're not going to get Suggs. But that would be the guy if I was James Jones or, I don't know, Isaiah Thomas, whoever's in charge of the Suns next year. That would be the name that I would be mentioning in this potential deal. You try to get him, but say you can't get him, maybe it's Jonathan Isaac in some combination of De Silva and Gary Harris or something like that. You know what I mean? And then you try and move Gary Harris to a third team. You get Tristan De Silva and Jonathan Isaac back for Jalen Green. Is that exciting? Not really.
Yeah, it's not very exciting. Not bad, not horrible, not exciting.
Charlotte?
Ooh, what does Charlotte have?
Not much, unless you want Miles Bridges.
Well, here's my exercise for you.
Grant
I'm
Williams,
just wondering,
Josh Green, and Josh Okogie. How do you like those three guys?
Who did you say?
Grant Williams, Josh Green, and Josh Okogie.
I'm not. Don't love it.
I know. It's like Jalen Green, if he could have been traded for good players, he would have already,
Okay, is there a decent team? Because you're throwing some bad teams at us. Well, I guess Orlando wasn't a bad team. Charlotte was a bad team. Mm-hmm. Is there another good team that could really use Jalen Green?
You don't want to hear my Brooklyn Nets one? Is that what you're saying?
I'll hear your Brooklyn Nets one. What's your Brooklyn Nets one?
It's just Cam Johnson or Nick Claxton. If you could find a way to pry one of those two guys away. You probably would have to include a pick in those cases, but like they could, like I'm trying to think of a team, like I even thought of Washington. Like, is there a team that puts Jalen Green on it where they could potentially up his trade value and then trade him again in the future? That's what I was trying to find, like in Charlotte and Brooklyn, because those are teams where you're like, okay, we'll take his few years of salary, 3 years of salary, really, because you're going to give us a pick, and then we'll try and trade him again later and get maybe another pick from him. That's the idea. I mean, it's what Brooklyn's doing with Cam.
I was just going to say Cam is really better than when he left. I mean, I know he gets more opportunity, but he's averaging 19 points per game, a career high this year, and his efficiency has not suffered for it. He's shooting really, really well this season. So it would be fun to have him back.
Both of those guys make less than Jalen Green, but the Nets have a ton of cap space, and they're going to have to do something with that cap space. So trading off a player that makes $23 million or whatever Cam Johnson does, or $25 million in Nick Claxton's case, for a guy who makes 33 in Jalen Green and then getting a pick for it is a good use of cap space for a team that's probably not going to be trying to be good next year. That's smart because you're using the cap space anyway and you're getting a pick from it. So, like, I think there's a world where Brooklyn might consider it. I don't really know because maybe they can get 2 picks for Cam Johnson somewhere else. But if the Suns were going to say, okay, we're trading Kevin Durant, we're getting back Jabari Smith Jr., Cameron Johnson, and Tari Eason, that's a home run kind of, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is sort of a home run. I mean, you've got a great shooter, a guy with potential, and a great defender. And they're 3 wings. Like, you get bigger, too, in that trade.
Yeah. Something to think about. Houston is an interesting team when talking about this. I think there's a world if a Houston Rockets fan is listening to this and they're saying, no, we just want to give you Dillon Brooks and nothing else. And
well, a lot of them,
I understand that, but
a lot of them are bargaining from an unreasonable position too, because a lot of them, if they did listen to something like this, they would say, "We don't want Kevin Durant, give us Devin Booker." And I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
That's just not. So that is a delusional position to take. If your whole point of bargaining is we'll give you the picks back, but only if you give us Devin Booker and not Kevin Durant. Sorry, Houston, that's not happening.
Which, by the way, to be frank, that's what Houston's saying behind the scenes right now too. we don't want KD, we want Devin Booker. But they're going to say that, right? They're going to say that until they get knocked out of the playoffs, right?
Wait until they get swept by OKC. They'll change their tune.
And then we'll see what happens at that point. So, yeah, there's options there. And by the way, you can build a lot of different variations of trades with the Houston Rockets if you want to find it, especially if you start including third teams in here. So, like every week, if you have options that make sense to you, I like to see them. I like to see fake trades. I think it's a fun thought experiment to think about all of these. So if you have them, send them to us. We'll review them. We'll talk about them, Sam and I at least, and see what makes sense. So good luck giving that a try. Any last thoughts on those?
No, I don't think so. Just join us tomorrow.
Yes, we should have said this earlier.
Yes, we should have, but we'll announce it. Hey, you get rewarded. This is what happens when you listen to the trade of the week. You get rewarded.
Yeah.
We've done our last couple games on playback.
And we won them, so yeah.
We had such an amazing experience in that Cleveland game, and people were telling us we have to keep doing playbacks until they lose a game.
And they
so we
said
will
we
test
were crazy for doing the Cleveland game, and look at us now.
We will test the theory tomorrow, Monday night, against the Milwaukee Bucks. Join us. 7 p.m. Phoenix time, I believe.
Bud revenge
correct?
Game. Yeah.
It's another home game?
Yeah, it is. I think so.
Let's see if they could do it.
We're going to watch it, so I sure hope they can. Playback.tv/The Timeline. If you'd like to join us on Patreon, it's a good time. We give out the Hustle Player of the Year of the Week every week on the Patreon podcast, and it's a good time to be giving that award away. There were a couple Mickey Mouse awards earlier in the year, but we got guys actually fighting for it now, and that's patreon.com/The Timeline. And yeah, we'll be back with a midweek episode, and join us on Playback. Thanks everyone for listening.